Hello, dear Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's not just your fault you came through campuses, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, fluent through world wars, were roles with psychiatry, all kinds of natures of organized crimes and delusions relative. Replaced at campuses A through Z, sickly distinctly, are things that James Madison and our founders behind him and his plan communicated to us. And then he was a president. And then before they were behind him and his plan, plural, but we were supposed to refer to them plural as him to keep it simple. As I read, and they went to George Washington and got him to agree to help them and to use that plan, which was a plan to counter extort and force the other founders to be. Now, we have heard people say it was about tea taxes, it was about trying to seek for religion. That's an insult to anyone using black people as whites of eyes. In other words, let alone who those breaching methods laws hurt worst. Our founders communicated for us to understand the breaching method laws with slavery against everyone sickly distinctly, but against color too. Northern colonies and southern colonies, it was entrenched sickly distinctly, but non-distinctly too. A part of internationally monitored conversations in themselves, their own respective countries. Fact sheeping nature tortured, extorted, and enslaved locations, areas, and states' voices, and pretending other to a great extent, or they would be sensed, including if they were as a body, as a majority of people, including if they were everybody, because the breaching method stayed entrenched the same way it did in America, with slavery entrenched both in the North and in the South, right to the end of the Civil War, and demonstrably further. But see, we have the nature debate in all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the courts themselves, and the police forms themselves, and their sources, increasingly people tied to mayors, involved as timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, even when they are not in those cases, and fluent through our countries are roles with ones with badges who are also psychiatry, roles with all kinds of natures of organized crime, and delusions relative, simultaneously where there are criminally foreign influence, factory nature, quality aspects in nature, and roles further with the World Trade Center attack that a former Governor Malloy of Connecticut, people that had conversations with him had this, and intelligence communities at the campuses in Wethersfield through time. And they've been planting evidences with their sources and at corners of streets with news locations, from Wethersfield founding locations, all along from Main Street, Wethersfield, conjunctions to all along Route 175 through Newington into New Britain at Central Connecticut State University, New Britain, Connecticut. Names from Wethersfield intelligence through time on all sides of Central Connecticut State University. They have roles of predicate acts with facts and identity thefts, frauds, slanders, and sequence shifts, and police departments attaching little kids to fake conversations with themselves. As timed collusions, again, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, whole wire crime acts and methods at the same time. In the form also of faking the police and changing police transcripts with phones. See, this is the difference of the agency's guilt is also used originally and still. It is recorded that it is inseparable, where and how there are demonstrations of the corruption of the different agencies, regard all of them. They have roles with worse than criminal incompetence, leaving out and having left out how we have black people as whites of eyes in nature with revelations here, replaced too, not just with our founders committee. None could see the whites of eyes. You guys want, and they have their New Britain Superior Court has roles with a whole bunch of people there and tied to them, where they use their differences, male, female, cultural, physical culture, their religious differences, their roles with readings of history and of the sciences and of others, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions about perspectives on life relative to what I caught them doing with child abusers, principal leaders of kids, forced. Governor Malloy has roles with intelligence families, increasingly with East Hartford, Connecticut, involved with courts and their family members, and with the FBI Director Robert Luskin and co-defendants of his, and their roles with their intimate ties of the courts too, with foreign and domestic military at West Hartford locations, as one's increasingly involved with Wethersfield locations, like increasingly the Wethersfield Community Center and all sides of it were and are involved with judges and prosecutors and people on all sides of Central Connecticut State University, intercities and intra-cities, also with educators putting fake things and fake ties between kids that don't even know each other on campuses. And they're trying to put fake exceptions, like take a picture. And sometimes there are no exceptions, like with the Joshua Julian. I only know his name was repeated to me by a Mark Violet and by a Ray Cololo, who are increasingly involved with a Ray Cololo will court express, demonstrate, confirm, and repeated the name John Malone before I ever met him. John Malone made extended confessions about his roles and different things he said at different times. There are proofs that he was trying to record things out of sequence. John Malone has roles with foreign and domestic military, and people have 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike and along the Berlin Turnpike, and including with a Czech Casper too, and people with the Casper family. Increasingly, they were brought up to me by people associated with Anthony Agnew on Hotmail, on Facebook, involved with the Leahy family, and other doctors with some medical and sexual offenders of kids, with judges and prosecutors, and the governors. These are people involved with California. Jennifer Kennepicky, she's involved with people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, repeated along Hangdog Lane in Wethersfield, Connecticut. Increasingly, people on Hangdog Lane in Wethersfield, Connecticut, have roles of predicate acts with the former Mayor Gold and other mayors who have roles with the World Trade Center attack, including with Saudis after the World Trade Center attack, involved with someone with the name O'Neill, involved with the principal upskirt nature, Principal Bean from Wethersfield, Connecticut. Further involved with Whiting Forensics with a Joshua Julian on his Facebook page. Mark Violet confessed, demonstrated, recorded, confirmed. He's involved with some KKK, Confederate flag theme, black theme, Latino theme, some Mendez police and Domain police. They have roles with the community center in Wethersfield and the Wethersfield Police Department, involved with them with various and with my algebra class teacher and people that, in other words, increasingly judges and prosecutors are personally and professionally involved with Wethersfield police families and their roles with the same house/S, with retired police chiefs and their intimate ties involved with predicate acts with the same house/S, further recorded roles with the principal upskirt nature. And Robert Rodriguez and my other past neighbors on the street made confessions and demonstrations. Only one of them about the untimely deaths. But both of them have them with roles with people at Trinity College who put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. And they were confessed and recorded. There were people involved with the Joshua Stryker too at Trinity College. He put fake things in the databases with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and a whole bunch of people tied to intelligence families that grew up near me. And they used that to pretend that I knew them, and they made fake exceptions. And then they had to hide that years later. Inter and intra cities, they stack a whole bunch of different communicated uses of rights to lie, but they don't have the right to lie on a mass scale. That's why we have little theater fake actors speak wanting to have nature debate about the Capitol attack to cover up, pretend they don't realize they're forcing a quality of fact treatment nature as criminal insidiousness nature, as hyper criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. And collusion with the interbranch forging and switching names, while the stack as collusion, stacking predicate acts with facts with the branches of government individually grouped and together, roles with those predicate acts with facts methods, also coupled and grouped all together. And the difference of them and the intelligence tied to them is a whole bunch of nations A whole bunch of people with intelligence tied to the name Scalora and Pandolf have roles of wire crimes, fake sequence shifts, fake ties, fake natures and ties to me, set up fake exceptions, has something to do with their roles with the World Trade Center attack, and increasingly people tied to the educators of Ray Reynolds. And I only had one class of them, and that school closed the year after I went to it. It was kindergarten. I barely had any communications with them. There are all kinds of ways stacking fake things in databases. Not only capable of it, originally and still. The states defend us from the federal, and the federal defends us from the states at the same time. No one even discerns why and how, because there are other names involved from all ages and natures of campuses, including fire and medical campuses. Increasingly, families associated with the Institute of Living on Harvard Hospital's campus have roles intercities with names next to campuses involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and their relative delusions. In other words, supposed to have experts on reason. We have them tactically delusions raw, criminally foreign influenced readings of reality. Of all kinds of wire crime acts and methods, mail crime acts and methods, stacking databases no one's looking into, and roles with treating subjects like what they think about the integrity of things or of agencies, etc. Right to the difference between this breaching method is involved at all locations / you guys have other communicated for our founders what they communicated about the founding locations in Hartford and in Wethersfield, Connecticut, where George Washington had to come with James Madison's plan and the help of the founders behind him to counter-extort right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. But note, they had to leave slavery entrenched. They did not have free speech. They communicated. They left us the damn proofs of it. They did not have it through their lifetimes. And that was James Madison was our founder before they even had the first presidents. And the first one, George Washington, who agreed to help to use their plan and to help them counter, extort, and force the other third. Because there are three natures of America's founders. One group that accords, and there are proofs that were behind James Madison, his plan too, that agree with the Constitution on a bridge and why we have rights are too numerous to have to list them. Let alone, differentially, especially if we are Native American or not, because what nature is showing us. This was already a possession of everyone's campuses, everyone's database of relativity to ourselves. Instead, now we're being led by the hyper invisible, but still discernible. Now having been led by criminal re-engineerings of ancient sciences, of the campus's Marcia system, by the republic for which we stand, that relies on pantheism being led by the identity of hyper invisible, but still discernible. That's why we're not supposed to use a name for it, except for the science of, communicating about. In other words, if we notice, as there are all kinds of hyper evidential proofs, A through Z countries have been systems self-valued roles within as systems of the human species body, of individual bodies, with all group differences being generated by nature that shows us it is using us as a manifest, as its own identity to the extent we can discern. That comes with its complete identity relationship to itself and only increasing value of that. With revelation, it shows us it's using a species body system. Even the fish have two eyes. It is showing us, look, there is what invented that is not you nor them, but is both anyway. We're and how we are, the identity of space / existence, even anything made up, has its hypervolume science, inseparable from the parts, distinctly from the individual parts, not distinctly too, but the finite parts, the group parts, grouped and or active, and progressive are per nature's demonstrations of progressive, which is like, for example, showing us the season's value before they get here. But more importantly, it's showing us its body to an extent, its identity relationship to itself complete, and the only increasing value of that here or of it forced from here, these of Hadis, distinct from death, distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous. However, so in other words, please, Governor Malloy, former Governor Malloy of Connecticut, there are more people, and there is a Leahy family that attached me to fake conversations with themselves. A Lombardo family also, through the mail, pretended I was yelling things out, and she replaced things I said with one of the people involved with the Parks and Recs, with the intelligence community and foreign countries, and a Kevin Dillon involved with it with intelligence communities, foreign and domestic, planting evidences on all sides of my house through time, as one of the ones involved with the principal upskirt nature. Also, there's a Thomas Dillon and an Annie Dillon, and I still didn't get a response for what I recorded them doing, and they changed and faked what's digitally recorded. They have a Judge Killian involved with replacing what's actually digitally recorded. Roles also with the FBI and the police and other judges and prosecutors and their family members and their co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and their neighbors, increasingly involved with the same house /S near me, increasingly involved with falsified police reports and police switching and forging names, and their roles with others also, with a whole bunch of different police departments and with the retired police chiefs and their intimate ties involved with them with that. And the Wethersfield police phones, they put in fake transcripts. They put me in fake communications with the police as a kid. I didn't go down there at all as a kid. And I went down there, but I didn't have any words at all with one of the Mendez brothers or any officer. In other words, I said one sentence to my friend who was getting something for me. He stole that and pretended I spoke with him. My Saudi friend. And he's one of the ones increasingly, those are Mendez brothers are increasingly recorded involved with FBI Director Robert Luskin, with a Joe DeMoro and a Don LeConte and a John LeConte and a whole bunch of other people at Trinity College involved with criminal enterprises and private ones, Afghan leaders of kids and kids involved with a whole bunch of people at the Wethersfield town offices and the community center, and next in conjunctions to the community center and in the Wethersfield town offices. They have the Facebook pages involved, and these are also Russians in Ukraine and their doctors. Increasingly, Hartford Hospital has people with mayors from Wethersfield involved with the DeMoro's Market that used to be next to Hartford Hospital for years, and other businesses and people associated with them, and Isles Kitchen not far from hospital there, but also next to Buckley High School now, which is down the street from DeMoro's Market. And Mayano relatives, people, Miano. He's one of the ones that sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm collusion with federal evidences crimes, criminally foreign influence with foreign and domestic military, and people associated with coaches, having conversations behind my back with my educators. In other words, and the only class I had with him was an exception. And like 2 times I had a cooking class in high school. Increasingly, those people are involved with my neighbors, the ones involved with the wire crimes with police department, falsified police reports, court switching and forging names. The Facebook page of the Wethersfield Police Department, increasingly a Mike Pandoff and a Joshua Schumack have roles also with the news that attach me to fake communications with the police. And they have their Facebook page involved with child sex offenders and medical offenders. And they have their religious narratives involved. Mark Violet says he's involved with them with some religious spots and with along Route 3. And their roles also with Jewish spots and Jewish themed, with people planting evidences on my street from other areas through time. And then that was brought up. Increasingly, Harper Hospital needs to get onto paper too. Because I told you guys there were more threats on the kids that are credible. You have foreign and domestic doctors tied to prosecutors and judges and news at the same time, speaking things, planting evidences on corners of streets and next to schools. Identity theft, fraud, slanders. Increasingly, people tied to a Lance Cuddy. Little kids and adults recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He has roles with past first force child abusers, leaders of kids, and more involved. I never had a class with him in my life. Never saw him on the inside of school in my life. Lance Cuddy. His name was repeated to me by one of the teachers involved further with a Mayor Gold, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and confessions, and then pretend people had conversations or responses to it, and changing what's actually the people saying respond. Increasingly, Debbie Gold and her father have roles with more educators with the kids at the time of the principal child offender, and more security with schools through time has been involved with it. Has something to do with the people, their ties with intelligence on off to Town Line Drive, on off the Berlin Turnpike, all along roads and routes like Route 175. They already painted themselves roles with predicate acts along those routes, and relative to their roles with uses of confessions by the breaching method that countries A through Z don't have the sophistication to discern. In other words, so they're just putting fake things in databases and they're building on collusions with it. Increasingly, names next to the kindergarten I went for 1 year on Fuller Street, it was called Fuller. On Valley Crest is a street in conjunctions to it. Increasingly involved with a John DeMorrow, a Joe DeMorrow, and a Paul DeMorrow. I never even had class with them. They're educators involved with foreign and domestic intelligence and medical families with the houses. And these are ones also with the businesses like Tomorrow's Market and Iowa's Kitchen. Involved also with a house near Harvard Hospital's Institute Living too. No, on the campus of Harvard Hospital in 1822 put there. And they also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike with a Joshua Julian. I never saw Joshua Julian there. A Joshua Schumacher. One time I saw him there. He has roles with the intelligence community through time with all sides of criminal and civil cases and sides of crime scenes as collusion/S with a whole bunch of different countries and overt criminal enterprises and private ones and more child abusers, leaders of the kids. These are people with using their own differences and other people's differences, not just but as psychopaths into branch, and the people in the hallways of the courts are really sick people. In other words, originally still because they came through campuses. The forgiveness is so we could heal their souls. But you have to follow mandated law for this. There's a Jennifer Kennepicky who was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by the intelligence community and foreign that had time collusions. That's why she repeated confessions to me regarding people on Hangdog Lane in Wethersfield, Connecticut, and her roles with a Jonathan Maiano, and with the intelligence community is Jonathan Maiano is involved with sequence chefs and people on my street from other areas involved with people like him. Increasingly, Elm Streets in Wethersfield and Rocky Hill. Increasingly involved with people with 2 times I took cooking classes. They put people in that class. And Eric Oliveri, planted in a Paul Zano, sought me out as strangers. They have something to do with Trinity College, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with courts, families, and foreign and domestic military and overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time, as their roles with the names next to election locations. It's use of location/S collusion that the breaching method uses and used. It's not by accident you guys keep going, Hitler's name or Jews. In other words, and you guys are calling out, you guys are both sides of issues. Oh, but that's how we like to be smart. It's a fake sick. You guys can't speak for the law without black people's rights of eyes. If you think you can, that's why you need to get on paper with the interbranch forging and switching names, with child offenders and medical offenders with their own kids, and the prosecutors and judges with their kids and extended family members, not by accident with the same house /S with time collusion with them. And this writing forensics since I was a kid, increasingly involved with predicate acts on my street and at the campuses I went. And people with this Joshua Julian, also on with this Anthony Yagman on Facebook and on YouTube, inter social media involved with predicate acts with New Britain Superior Court, like with a Brian and Harper courts and a Connecticut District Court with a Brian Silver is increasingly one of the people involved with prosecutors and judges involved with predicate acts with the Yagman family, with Leahy doctors and some Dr. Dingleberry and some Dr. Dewberry.